We are currently witnessing a standoff in Minnesota that looks less like a legal disagreement and more like a jurisdictional war. On January 12, 2026, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, flanked by the mayors of Minneapolis and St. Paul, filed a federal lawsuit to halt what they are calling an unconstitutional invasion by federal agents. But while the mainstream headlines are screaming about sovereignty and protection, there is a massive area of data, oversight, and accountability that the media is intentionally ignoring. This is the blind spot where the truth of this crisis is being buried under layers of political posturing. Welcome to part 1 of our deep dive series into the Minnesota sovereignty crisis. Today we are finding our focus on the collision between state and federal authority, and we're going to look at what happens when the very people sworn to uphold the law use that law as a shield to block transparency. Welcome to the Blind Spot. I'm Lydia. Let's look at the facts of the case. The federal government, through the Homeland Security, launched Operation Metro Surge, a massive deployment of thousands of agents into the Twin Cities. Now, the state's argument is that this deployment is reckless, poorly coordinated, and that it has created chaos in our neighborhoods. They claim that federal agents are commandeering local resources and forcing our police officers to deal with the fallout of federal operations. But here's the detail often left in the blind spot. Federal authorities didn't just show up for no reason. This surge was initiated as a direct response to a massive breakdown in local law enforcement's ability to handle organized criminal enterprises, and specifically to assist in the investigation of billions of tax dollars missing in federal funds. When you hear Attorney General Ellison call this an invasion, you have to ask, since when is federal law enforcement conducting a federal investigation on U.S. soil considered an invasion? In our system of government, federal agents have a clear mandate to enforce federal laws. Yet in Minnesota, we are seeing a unique and dangerous precedent being set. While local officials are attempting to treat federal agents like foreign combatants, this brings us to the heart of the legal battle, the 10th Amendment. Now, as conservatives, we usually love the 10th Amendment. It's the states' rights amendment. The principle that any power not specifically given to the federal government belongs to the states. It's a vital check on tyranny. However, we are currently seeing a masterclass in the distortion of that principle. The state is arguing that by deploying these agents, the feds are coercing Minnesota into changing its policies on sanctuary status and voter data. They are invoking the Anti-Commandeering Doctrine, which says the feds can't force state employees to do federal work. But let's keep finding our focus here. The Anti-Commandeering Doctrine was designed to keep the federal government from bullying states into doing their dirty work. It was never intended to be a get-out-of-jail-free card for states that want to block federal audits. If the state of Minnesota accepts billions in federal taxpayer dollars for social programs, they have effectively signed a contract. You cannot take money and then invoke sovereignty to keep the people who gave you the money from looking at the receipts. That isn't sovereignty. That's an attempt to create a legal black hole where accountability goes to die. What happens when this collision occurs? You get a vacuum. In St. Paul and Minneapolis, we are seeing city officials intentionally pulling back local support for federal agents. We're seeing sensitive location policies, which protect schools and churches, being used as a broad brush to create entire zones where federal agent investigators are effectively banned. This creates a jurisdictional no man's land. When the states tells the feds, you aren't welcome, and the feds say, we have a warrant, the only people who benefit are the ones currently siphoning money out of the system. This friction is a gift to the criminal elements. It creates a smokescreen of civil rights and state pride to hide the fact that the state's oversight has been non-existent. To see through this, we must stay committed to finding our focus on the ledger, not just the lawsuits. The Attorney General says he's protecting Minnesota's values. But as we will see in Part 2, those values apparently include allowing a $9 billion blind spot to grow in the state's budget. Why is the state so desperate to keep federal investigators out of their books? What are they afraid the auditors will find? In our next episode, we're going to dive into the specific mechanics of the $9 billion heist, defeating our future fallout, and why the state's cultural sensitivity became the perfect cover for a massive criminal enterprise. Thank you for watching Part 1 of the Minnesota Sovereignty Crisis. Subscribe to get notified when Part 2 is published. And remember, keep searching to find your focus.